Hello, everyone, and welcome to Science Unscripted. It's Connor here.
And Gabe. And Vicky Ristova.
Hello.
Sorry for calling you Nikki. That's absurd. You're Vicky.
It's okay.
Vicky is with us in studio today, and you have just published or just about to publish a piece on autism.
Yes.
And that is what we would like to talk to you about today.
Great.
So autism in this case is, or the focus of your article, is a new series on the Netflix streaming platform. And what is that? Let's start there.
That's what it's called? Autism?
No, I'm not sure what it's called. What is that series about?
Well, I'm writing about a few series, actually. In the article, I mention how portrayals of autism have changed across TV and film over the past few years. And I point to a few examples. So the series that you're probably talking about is called Love on the Spectrum. It's now on Netflix, and it is about autistic people trying to navigate romantic life and dating.
And how are they portrayed compared to the way they used to be portrayed? Is there
hold on, real
a black
quick.
and white difference here?
Is this documentary style? They're following real people.
So they are following real people, yes, and everything's unscripted. And they say that it's a documentary style. So these are real people portrayed on screen with their real behaviors.
What are some of the issues they face navigating? I mean, the dating scene is nuts for everyone. What are some of the issues specific to autism that they face that somebody else trying to, meet someone wouldn't?
Well, autistic people face all sorts of different challenges with communication, social interaction. Sometimes they have overstimulation, problems with processing and overstimulation. But symptoms are not equal between all autistic people. What I want to point out in the article is that every autistic person is different in the way that they experience the world.
And yet the way that they are being portrayed in media is changing or has changed?
It is changing, thankfully, yes. I got the chance to speak to the director of this series, Love on the Spectrum, and also an expert that has been talking about how these portrayals of autistic people have changed over the years. And according to him, he's saying that before, in media, autistic people used to be portrayed as curiosities or people that are like interesting and a bit of like freaks. And nowadays, there seems to be some sort of like the opposite trend. Autistic people positive qualities of autistic people, or so-called positive qualities, seem to be over-exaggerated. Things like autistic people thought about having special abilities or hyper-intelligence or superhuman abilities to count cards, like Rain Man, for example, or like Sheldon in The Big Bang Theory, which is also not really accurate. And what I'm trying to say in the article is that all of these portrayals of autism, especially that are done by people that are not autistic themselves and portray autistic characters, something needs to change. And thankfully it is. There are some examples of great series.
So real quick, the documentary style, of course, this is going to be an excellent portrayal if the editing is done correctly and ethically, right? Because we're watching people on the spectrum act normally. But these other series are fictionalized, and that's where I would think, or are they fictionalized?
Well, actually, now that you mention it, there is some criticism about Love on the Spectrum, about this particular dating show. So some of the criticism include like some of the autistic characters might be infantilized, or that they're given dating advice that is very common to neurotypical people and not really applicable to how they experience the world. So there is criticism. It's not like it's a perfect show. And for the other portrayals, yes, of course, it's very different when you talk about fictional characters, when you talk about dramas. There is one particular series called Heartbreak High, which the autistic community, or many people from the autistic community, think that does a particularly great job at portraying autism. The actress that plays the main character is also autistic, so she's also on the spectrum. And on the series, she shows how she struggles with everyday life, things like sensory processing or stimming to calm herself down when she's facing a difficult situation, or having a special interest, the so-called special interests in autistic people. So things, thankfully, are changing, hopefully towards the right direction.
I'm wondering if autism is so individual, like you describe it, that there's no one kind of it, then how should it be portrayed?
Yeah, it's a very good question. When I was doing my research, I actually discovered that the first description of autism was made in the 1940s, and the first definition of autism was made then. And from the 1940s till now, the definition has been changing and changing and changing every year. And of course, there are standards, the so-called international standards of how autism is being diagnosed. But some studies actually point out to the fact that these standards can exclude some people on the spectrum from being diagnosed. So there's just, even science still cannot pinpoint exactly which characteristics belong on that spectrum. Let's say so.
Wow.
That said, I would have to assume that definition has become more broad over the years, because either, it seems to me, this is completely anecdotal. One of two things has happened. The definition has become more broad and includes now more people who had, I don't know, something that was treated as a quirk going on with them, but no, in fact, I'm on the spectrum. So it's either that, or that more people are just aware of it and are therefore coming out and talking about it, because lots of posts online, hey, my son, my daughter, my friend is on the spectrum. That phrase, on the spectrum, I see a lot now, and that was not the case before.
I think both things that you mentioned are happening. Both people are more aware of what autism means, and that people cannot look autistic. A lot of autistic people are actually really good at masking their symptoms. So masking the way they behave, and they would behave just because they want to fit in better with society. And you are right that the definition has been changing from the 40s till now. People are now starting to realize that autism is much more than what it was considered previously in the 1940s, just like a sign of intellectual disability or difficulty with like motor skills. It's so much more than that. And oftentimes it's not even apparent. That's why the point of the article is to say, people, there's no way of looking autistic. There's no one right way of, or one way of being on the spectrum.
So how would our listeners, how would they know? If, there may be people out there listening right now who are on the spectrum, they just don't know it. So or they've never thought to ask, or they've never been told, hey, something's different with you, or I don't know. What are they looking for? What are their criteria that usually, or the characteristics that usually pop up where someone says, okay, it's time for you or it's time for me to go talk to a doctor and take a test?
I think for that, actually, what helps a lot is things like social media, which thankfully give a lot more exposure to people with autism to share their experiences online, and so that people can see that autism is not probably what they thought it is. One of the people that I spoke to from our article, actually, Emily, she is a content creator from the UK, and she's autistic herself. She didn't know she had autism until the age of 25, and the only way she found out was because online, through social media, seeing how other people described how they experience autism. That's the way that she started asking herself questions. Oh, I have that. I might,
And what is that experience like?
What are some of these symptoms, or how do you refer to them?
I mean, sometimes it's simple things like, I find noises or noisy environments or a classroom very overwhelming. Or sometimes I wouldn't be able to, control my emotions and somehow, go into a meltdown. And that's not something that I can control. So oftentimes it's things like this. Other times, autistic people learn a lot how to mask their symptoms, because they realize from a very early age that these things are not considered appropriate, I guess, for a society that is quite discriminative still towards autistic people.
And for anyone looking to learn more, the title of your article, it's a working title right now, as I understand it.
It's a working title, yeah.
What is the working title?
There is no such thing as looking autistic.
Ah, interesting. No such thing as looking autistic, by Vicky
Hristova.
Thank you for joining us today in studio to talk about autism.
Yeah, and real quick, for anyone listening out there, any questions that you might have for Vicky, send them to us at su@dw.com, and we will find a way to relay them to you, Vicky. You're not gone yet from the science department.
I am not gone yet, yes.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Science Unscripted.